What's going on, guys? And we're back. So if you're paying attention to what's going on with the video, you'll know that that first clip was a little bit out of order, but I do have the bike up and running, thank God. And it's a miserable, almost 100 degrees here in Alabama, but I'm out ripping around and I want to give you guys an update. But before we get into that, a little bit of a warning for riding with your visor up. I just got hit with a wasp or a hornet of some sort that went in my helmet and stayed in there, and I pulled over real fast. It was crawling around on my skull, and that was no fun. I'm allergic to those things. So anyways, back to the bike. Yeah, so I got the bike back. It's turning you around here. Bike is back up and running, back from DC Cycles. I discussed a little bit of the issues that I was having with the cables from Cable Kits. Hey, look, and I'm going to give that a few more miles before I do a update on that, as well as the risers, so that I can speak with assurance to the quality of the product. But I will say this preemptively, that Shane at Cable Kits did take really good care of me in getting that problem resolved. So I'll update you with the info on that on the next video. But as it comes to the bike with the full stage 2, man, this thing, I'm telling you, this thing rips. I did the wood 22XE cam per my tuner's suggestion, and I discussed that a little bit before, but man, he was right. As far as the rideability on this bike goes, this thing rides incredibly. Not only did I do the wood 22XE cam, I went ahead and did the wood racing lifters per his suggestion. He says the factory ones aren't that great, and not even the Screaming Eagle stuff is really that great, to be honest. And you'll notice I actually went with the it's hot. I went with the black push rod covers and the lifter box covers there. I think that looks really good to get rid of that shiny stuff on there. It's an all black bike. And the S&S Superstreet race only version, so no cat. I'm actually running this pipe with the dB reducer in, and it is still screaming loud, extremely loud. My tuner suggested go ahead and leave that dB reducer in unless I just wanted it louder. He said the bike actually made better torque with it in. So I'm gonna leave it in for now. It's really loud. We may try it out again a little bit later on. But this pipe sounds really good. My reason for going with this pipe is I just like S&S parts, and I like the consistency between the intake and the parts. But the pipe was supposed to make good power, and I think with the bags on this bike, I think that a longer pipe just looks better. I don't like the little shorty ones. They make less torque, and I just don't think they look as good with you know, with the bags on the bike. So this thing rips. I'm really, really excited about the way that this came out. I've actually got to put a few miles on it the past day and a half, and like I said, updating some stuff on it. So I do want to do an exhaust comparison. I'll actually drop that here so you can hear what it sounds like stock versus what it sounds like with the S&S pipe and the stage 2 the wood 22XE cam. So here's that. More like a Harley. factory, these bikes just sound really terrible. The EPA is cracking down on this, and bikes just don't make the power that they should be able to with the kind of displacement that they have. But that's just part of what's going on nowadays. So basically, a couple other things that I did to the bike in the meantime was I deflected it. That was kind of a pain in the butt. The ones come off the fork really easy, but to getting the ones off the bag, man, I had to get Goo Gone or Goof Off and scrub these things for probably close to 20 or 30 minutes a piece to get that off. Got them off of the inside of the fender there too. And I got rid of that awful billboard of a tag frame. I went with the Kuryakin laydown, and I actually like that a lot. So I want to get into the dyno numbers on this bike, but I just got to my gym. I'm gonna run in, hit some legs, probably run and grab a drink, and when I get back to the shop, I will update you guys with the dyno numbers, and we'll go over those sheets and everything, let you know how it turned out. So stay tuned. Local watering hole, the barge in Athens, Alabama. I'm having a drink. Come here, get my YouTube video. It's nice when your old lady is the bartender too. All right, get over here. Cheers, guys. See you back at the house. Hot day out there. Good riding though. Very hot and humid day. Good putting down some miles on the bike today though, and getting to fill it out a little bit more. Man, I'm really enjoying this thing. The responsiveness of the throttle and how early the torque comes on with this particular cam and how it builds power all the way to redline. Look, David at DC Cycles he was right. You know, I'm glad that I took his word for it and didn't go with the 475 S&S cam. This guy's been doing this for years, and if anybody knows this stuff, it's him. And as you saw earlier in the video, this cam does really sound good at idle. It's got a good chop to it. I know a lot of guys are doing the 131 Screaming Eagle kit so that they can use the street tuner and keep their warranty. Hey, look, to each their own. If that's what you want to do, I get it. But for the amount of money that I paid and for the amount of money those people are paying to have that 131 installed, I'm really happy with the way this bike turned out. So the horsepower and torque, actually, let's just go over that. So I've got that right here. Let's take a look. So, like I said, David at DC Cycles, stand-up guy, top-notch shop. Little small shop in Red Bay, Alabama, seemingly in the middle of nowhere. But don't judge a book by its cover. These guys have been doing this for years, and they really know their stuff. So when you get a bike done with them, they give you this cool packet. I actually got a t-shirt and a $50 gift card for the next time that I come in for their 110 horsepower club. So above particular horsepowers, they'll give you different levels of gift cards. And I think that's just like a really cool thing that they do for their customers. So let's take a look at what we've got here. So in this little packet, the presentation is really good. And, you know, they got your receipts and everything, of course, and they run all your codes and give you some information. And then actually give you this USB drive, which is really cool. I didn't know about this. So this USB drive has actually got my tune on it. So I can keep this with me, and if I'm out on the road somewhere and my ECU goes belly up and I have to have a new one installed or just something happens, all of my tuning information is on here. So it can be reflashed to my ECU and I can be back in business and back on the road. So that's really cool that they include that. And then, of course, your dyno chart. So let's take a look at this. we'll go over some of these numbers. So stock, base run, 93 horsepower, 110 wheel torque. Stage 2, 118 horsepower and 126 torque. So we can take a look at our torque curves here. Blue being stock horsepower and torque, red being with a stage 2, the cam horsepower and torque. And so just to kind of go over some of these numbers, I talked to David a good bit about this, and he says that on the 2020 and 2021 bikes, my hair's sweating, leaking. So on the 2020 and 21 bikes, the speed sensor is plugged in somewhere in the front end of the bike, very easily unplugged, and then the ECU doesn't pick up the speed of the bike, and you can run it all the way out to the red line in 6th gear. So you want to dyno tune these bikes in 6th gear because that's the 1-to-1 ratio, which means that the transmission is not turning all the other gears in the trans, it's just turning the 6th gear. This bike actually is a little bit different. I guess they've changed some things up, so the speed sensor is under the starter on the transmission, and apparently it's pretty complex to get to. It can be done, but that's just for the sake of putting numbers on paper. So he actually dynoed it in 5th gear, and he says that the torque comes in a little bit lower in 5th gear than it would in 6th, because of course there's more parasitic drag on the engine from all the gears in the transmission being turned. So the horsepower, good number, 118 horsepower, 126 torque, good as well. But he said realistically in 6th gear, if we were able to run this bike all the way out, that it would be closer to 130 wheel torque. So what he was able to do is he was able to raise the speed limiter, but he could only raise it in power vision to, I want to say, 158 miles an hour. And 6th gear would hit that limiter before it hit the red line. Prior to having that done, I know this bike would do 128 miles an hour. I tested it in Mexico. I've actually tested this bike again, also in Mexico, and hit 136.3 miles an hour on GPS, and the bike definitely had more to go. But the power is not so much the restriction there as it is the aerodynamics of this bike. So as far as what I was able to get out of this bike for the money that I put into it, I'm extremely happy with it. I've got, $900 in the pipe. Of course, you have to get the S&S pedal, which is like $170, the intake, and then $2,300 is what it cost me to have the work done at DC Cycles. That's the parts, the cam, the race lifters, that is the extra black parts that I got put on the bike, the gaskets, all the necessary stuff, and the dyno tune. And man, for the money and the power that I got out of this bike and how it rides, I'm incredibly happy with this thing. Couldn't be happier with the guys over there at DC. I'll definitely be taking my wide glide back over to them later this year to do the 107, because they're just stand-up guys. So I hope to give you an update soon about the risers and what I was able to get ironed out with the cable kit. And I want to put a few more miles and see how that goes before we release that, but I'm feeling good about it as well. So that's it for the update today. Hope you guys like, subscribe, comment with any questions, and I'll leave you with a parting acceleration shot. Cheers, guys.